Consciousness could be an energy field like magnetism. What if your thoughts aren't really in your brain? We've all been taught that consciousness, your feelings, your awareness, your very sense of you, is locked inside the tangled, wet web of your neurons. But what if that's only half the story? What if your consciousness is actually a measurable field of energy that your brain creates, kind of like the invisible field around a magnet? Now, this isn't mysticism. It's a provocative scientific idea suggesting we might be able to detect the physical presence of consciousness itself. It's a theory rooted in a new kind of dualism, not mind versus spirit, but matter versus energy. Stay with me, because this idea, while still on the fringes of neuroscience, could change everything you think you know about your own mind. Section 1. The giant problem in your head. Before we get into the field, we have to talk about a huge wall that neuroscience has been slamming into for decades. It's called the hard problem of consciousness, and it boils down to a simple yet maddeningly difficult question. Why do we feel anything at all? Scientists are fantastic at explaining the easy problems. They can scan your brain and watch the exact areas that light up when you see the color red. They can trace the whole neural journey, from photons hitting your eye to the electrical sparks in your visual cortex. They can map out the how. But nobody can explain why all that biological fizzing and popping creates the private inner experience of seeing redness. Why don't you just process red like a computer processes data? Why do you have this rich inner movie playing in your head, packed with sensations, feelings, and a sense of I, who's watching it all? Trying to find consciousness by looking at single neurons is like staring at one pixel on a TV and trying to understand the plot of the movie. You can know everything about that pixel, its color, its brightness, but you'll never, ever get the story. The story happens on a completely different level. For a long time, the main idea has been that consciousness is just an emergent property of a complex brain, a ghost that somehow pops out of the machine. But that's more of a philosophical shrug than a real physical explanation. This massive gap in our understanding has left the door open for a new and, frankly, electrifying possibility. Section 2. The hypothesis, a field of consciousness. This brings us to the core of the idea. What if consciousness isn't a ghost in the machine at all? What if it's a physical structure we've been measuring for years but didn't recognize? The hypothesis is this: consciousness is the brain's electromagnetic field. Think about a simple magnet. The magnet is a piece of metal, but it generates an invisible field of influence all around it. You can't see the field, but you can definitely see its effects when it neatly aligns iron filings or pushes another magnet away. That field is a real thing. Electromagnetic field theories of consciousness argue that the brain does something similar. Every time a neuron fires, it creates a tiny blip of electromagnetic energy. Now, imagine billions of neurons firing together in synchronized rhythms. According to the theory, these tiny pulses can merge into a single, unified, and stunningly complex electromagnetic field that envelops the brain. In this view, this field is where the magic happens. Your thoughts, your emotions, your unified sense of self, they aren't stored in billions of separate neurons. They're encoded in the holistic patterns of this one overarching energy field. It's a huge shift in perspective. The neurons are the musicians in an orchestra, and their electrical signals are the individual notes. But consciousness isn't the notes. It's the music, the single coherent sound wave that fills the entire concert hall. The field is where all the separate parts become an integrated whole. Section 3. The evidence, can we measure the mind? This might be starting to sound like sci-fi, but a big reason this theory is compelling is that it's connected to things we can actually measure. First off, the brain's electromagnetic field is not hypothetical. We detect it every day in hospitals using EEG and MEG scans. These machines measure the electrical and magnetic fluctuations created by our brain's collective activity. For decades, many scientists wrote these fields off as an epiphenomenon, just an irrelevant byproduct, like the heat coming off your laptop. It's interesting, but it's not doing the real work. But what if it isn't the exhaust? What if it's a key part of the engine? This is where the conscious electromagnetic information field theory, or CEMI field theory, comes in, proposed by Professor John Joe McFadden. His theory argues that this EM field isn't just noise, it's a hub of richly integrated information. It also offers a neat solution to one of neuroscience's biggest puzzles, the binding problem. How does your brain take the shape, color, motion, and smell of a rose and bind them all into a single unified experience of a rose? The CEMI theory suggests the answer is the field itself. Because all that information is encoded in one single EM field, it's already integrated. The information is physically unified in space, not just happening at the same time. We know that different states of awareness have very different EM field patterns. The slow, rolling delta waves seen in deep, dreamless sleep are radically different from the complex patterns you see when you're wide awake and focused. These brain waves are the EM field. The fact that they correlate so tightly with our state of awareness is a key piece of circumstantial evidence for the theory. Even more, we know that external EM fields can directly affect how the brain works. A technique called transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, uses a powerful magnetic coil to create an electric field inside the brain. It can be used to temporarily interrupt or even boost specific cognitive functions. This shows it's a two-way street. The brain's neurons make a field, and in return, a field can make the neurons fire differently. This suggests the field isn't just a passive witness, but an active player in your mind's operations. Section 4. The landscape of theories. To be fair, the EM field theory is definitely not the only game in town. It's more of a challenger, an underdog in a field of competing ideas. One of the more mainstream models is the global workspace theory, GWT. GWT pictures consciousness as a kind of theater stage. Most of the brain's work happens backstage in the dark. But when information becomes conscious, it's broadcast from the stage to a wide audience of specialized systems all over the brain. It's a powerful model, but it's a bit vague on what the stage is physically made of. Then, on the more exotic side, you have quantum theories of consciousness, like the orchestrated objective reduction, OR theory, from Sir Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff. This idea suggests consciousness doesn't come from classical neuron firing, but from quantum processes happening inside tiny protein tubes in our neurons called microtubules. OR is still highly debated. A major hurdle for many scientists is the problem of decoherence. They argue that the brain is just too warm and messy for the fragile quantum states to survive. While the idea is fascinating, it remains on the speculative side of science. The EM field theory offers an interesting middle path. It's radical because it moves consciousness from our cells to an energy field, but it's also conservative because it uses only standard classical physics. It doesn't need any new, spooky quantum effects. It just recasts a phenomenon we're already measuring every day in a starring role. Section 5. The grand implications, thinking outside the skull. So let's just run with this for a second. If consciousness really is a physical field, what would that mean? This is where it gets really wild. A physical field extends into space. And while the brain's EM field is incredibly weak and fades fast with distance, does it stop dead at the edge of our skulls? By definition, the fields we measure with an EEG are the parts of the field that have already leaked out. Now, to be crystal clear, this is pure speculation and is not supported by current scientific evidence. But it raises some mind-bending questions. Could our conscious experience not be 100% private? Could these fields subtly interact? We're not talking about telepathy or psychic powers. Any effect would be unimaginably small and not consciously perceived. But does it offer a potential physical metaphor for what we call a vibe in a room, or that palpable tension you can feel during a silent argument? If this theory ever proved true, it would mean we aren't just isolated biological machines. We would be, in a very real sense, fields of resonant energy, constantly broadcasting the signature of our inner world. It would reframe our place in the universe, suggesting that consciousness is a fundamental part of physical reality, just as tangible as light or magnetism. This is the frontier of science, where physics, biology, and philosophy all crash together. But what do you think? Is this a glimpse into the future of understanding the mind? Or is it just a beautiful piece of science fiction? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. To be clear, the EM field theory of consciousness is a hypothesis, not a proven fact. But it's a powerful and testable one. It offers potential answers to some of the deepest problems in science, and it does it without breaking the known laws of physics. It leaves us with one last, electrifying question. Are we just computers made of meat, or are we something more, something electric?